best days happen out here, where the only thing on the line is what you can catch. And every cast could be the one that fills your memories with the fish of your lifetime. Mercury engines are made for exploring. So are you. Go boldly.
As musky anglers, we all plan, prepare, and are consumed in the pursuit of a trophy muskie. Skix is available with two-piece saltwater-tested tough technology for easy storage in your boat or truck, and are designed to handle any musky lure. You can be assured you're backed by precision Shimano technology. If you fish for skis, you need these.
You know what? Almost like a poet. That's all I can say. You know what? I don't know how many years it's been now that we've. This is information I should have, kind of researched, and I apologize. But Jim's been a part of our show now for so long, and I'll tell you, it's something that I know that talking to the muskie guys every muskie Sunday, it's like they just come out of that room saying, "I can't believe that guy! Like he's always teaching us something new." So, and today we're going to get personal with them. So, welcome to the show, none other than Mr. Jim Saric himself.
Hey, Andy, how are you?
Good. How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I am doing great.
It's been a year. We did a show last year. It's kind of different, but person-wise, it's been like 3 years now. So I miss you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I miss being up there. Believe me, it was, I miss doing shows. I mean, part of the thing for me, besides fishing, obviously we all love to fish and do that. But, I really enjoy, besides doing the TV show, I really enjoy doing seminars and traveling to different parts of the country and talking muskies with everybody. And so I really miss being up, particularly up in Toronto and meeting all the Canadian anglers. I mean, it is just a hotbed of a lot of newer people or younger people who are just so jacked up about muskie fishing. And so I kind of feed off that, and it's fun. It really is. I miss it.
What's the elusive fish of, you said, what, 10,000 casts? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 10,000 casts. I try to kind of, try to dispel that rumor, but I've had some trips where it certainly seems like it's been 10,000 casts. That's for sure.
So if you're Canadian, you have to add 40% to that because we're in kilometers, not miles.
That's right. Yeah.
We're 14,000 casts in Canada, right? But
right, yeah, exactly. It's just exactly. Bring it in there for sure.
But great. You know what? You've a lot of your shows have been right here in Canada, right, in Ontario, even, right? So, so you've had the opportunity to fish here. Are U.S. fish different than Canadian fish?
Well, they don't speak with an accent, number one. No. So that's a thing. The Canadian ones typically have like a Canadian flag on their tail. You can see that versus the American ones. That's always a good thing. But really, I would say that a muskie is a muskie is a muskie. The advantage, the Canadian advantage, is that you've got, number one, the lakes are bigger, right? And so I don't care if you're bass fishing, muskie fishing, walleye fishing, the bigger the water, you generally have bigger fish. The Great Lakes smallmouth are bigger than the inland lake smallmouth typically, right? You have that. And so you've got really big waters in Canada, so you have more larger muskies. That's number one. I think another thing you see is that you have more fish shallow. They're shallower, they're related to cover than we do in the States. And so that makes it, if you have more big fish shallow, it increases your odds, and so, that's kind of the allure. And that, we fish in the States a lot. There's a lot of great muskie fisheries in the States, and I've caught a lot of big muskies in the States. But when I go to Canada, I'm in a situation where I have a lot more larger fish that's shallow. So it increases your odds of catching bigger ones. And that's what, as muskie fishermen, we're all about big ones, Andy, right? That's kind of what it's about.
That's the whole thing about muskie. Muskies Canada has done so much work in reintroducing. Well, they were always there, but just getting them back to where they were on Lake Simcoe, Georgian Bay. Like, they've done a lot of work, and I've respected the organization. They've always been a big part of today, which is Muskie Sunday, and we support even their Odyssey, which will be coming up hopefully in another couple of months. Hopefully everything goes well, or a month or so. But how far south do muskie go? Do they go right to Florida? I don't know.
Well, they're not in Florida. I wish they were in Florida. I'd be there now if they were in Florida, although I'm going tarpon fishing in a couple of weeks, but which are like as close to muskies as I can get, with that. But, you've got them in Tennessee, North Carolina, so there's far south down there. Virginia is a great state for muskies. A lot of those rivers have muskies in them. Kentucky, obviously. So if you kind of look at that latitude from, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, you've got that south. Although there's a lake in New Mexico called Blue Water Lake in New Mexico, which is in the Southwest, and that has a lot of muskies in it as well. They've got those tigers, the musky northern pike hybrid, and that's got a ton of fish in it too. So you could go, really, I mean, I would say in March, really starting in mid-March when the weather is more stable, you start having some really legit, really good muskie fishing opportunities in the southern part of the U.S.
So just a quick question. We're going to get into some other topics, but being further south, I know with bass, the warmer the climate, they're feeding harder all year, and that allows them to also get bigger, right? Is that the case with muskie too? As you get further south, the North Carolinas and stuff like that, would that not be a rule of thumb that because of warmer temperature, they'd be feeding a lot longer, or not necessarily true?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So that it's kind of it's a give and take. So in those southern waters, the muskies grow a lot faster, right? And so they grow, I don't want to say twice as fast as the ones in northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada, but let's just say that is a general rule, almost twice as fast. But they don't live as long. So a muskie in Canada or a muskie in northern Minnesota or northern Wisconsin might live 21 to 25 years old or older, in some areas. But a lot of those fish down south might only live to be 12, maybe 14 years might be max for some of those fish. But, 10 to 12 years old is like that end. So they grow real fast and then they burn out and they die, and because the water's so warm and they're chasing shad, they're doing great. So yes, you catch them, they are very prolific, lots of them, that you can never stock enough muskies in these reservoirs because the shad supply is unlimited, and they're not feeding on largemouth everywhere. Or crappies. They're just primarily feeding on shad like everything else. So they grow really fast. They grow big. They're fun to catch early, but then you don't get many of them beyond 50 inches. You get a lot on the high end, might be 48 or 49 inches. Maybe a few hit the 50-inch mark, and then after that, they don't grow as long, and they end up dying.
Only because I'm not American, but you always hear these stories about muskie. Supposedly, a long time ago, I heard there was two communities that were on different bodies of water, and they were legally battling for the title of the home of the muskie type of deal. Is there truth to that? Have you ever heard that story or no?
I'm not sure. I mean, I hear different. It's funny, I travel all across the U.S. and all throughout Canada, and it's oh, this is the muskie capital of the world. No, this is, and I just all I can tell you is, as muskie anglers, we are all fanatical about our fish, and I know bass anglers are too. I mean, believe me, I love them. I love walleye and things, but you bass and walleye guys have nothing on us muskie guys. I'm just telling you, we are historically over the top.
Well, I can tell you got in the background there, you got a muskie that's going to go have his lunch. So obviously the way you position that, exactly what's going to happen with that.
Well, it's not meant to be that way. I mean, I've got a walleye on the other side over there too. Big walleye.
That's tomorrow's dinner.
That's
lunch's dinner.
Yeah, that's a big largemouth. That's actually a 12-pound largemouth I got from California several years ago. So I'm into that as well. And a big, what is that? Keep this cameras backwards kind of thing. A big, a 31-inch walleye with 11 1/4 pounds, back there. So
are any of those fish Canadian? Obviously the bass isn't.
The muskie is Canadian, but the bass and the walleye are not. So
there you go. So you got a little bit of Canadian in you.
Right. Yeah, right. No, I mean, hey, I love muskie fishing in Canada, and I dream about it all the time. It was so great to finally get back into Ontario, come August of last year. It was fun. So
yeah, and everything was opening up, so it was easy to cross the border. It wasn't easy, but it was not too bad. And just unfortunately, this winter with some of the restrictions, it made it a little more difficult. And it was asking a lot for us to maybe jeopardize you guys being put out of commission for 2 or 3 weeks to, to come up here. So there was a lot of different reasons why we kind of looked at it and decided we'll go one more year type of deal. But saying all this, like, obviously your Canadian affiliation with some of the guys, you've actually gone out with a lot of Canadians. Like, you've gone out with guides up here. You've gone out with different groups of people.
Yeah, I mean, I fish with lots of friends. John Anderson is a guide in the Ottawa. Buddy of mine, John Cowan, who's got a place on the Kawarthas. I fish with him. A lot of the Northwest Ontario, guys that are friends of mine. I mean, the one great thing about doing the television show is that a lot, before I had the television show, and we've been doing it for 16 years, a lot of these guides are friends of mine, right? I meet them at seminars and do this. So the problem was when we were just fishing for fun, and before I had my TV show, it was pretty hard to ask them, hey, I'm coming up to the area, get rid of your customer for the day and let's go fishing. It's really hard for them to accept that. But, now when I had the television show, it's like, hey, we're going to film a show. It's going to help you. It's going to help me. And so I had the opportunity to fish together. So, friends of mine, who, Bill Sandy, who has his lodge in Lake of the Woods, Julian Kalka and, Steve Herbeck, the guys from Andy Meyer's Lodge, different people that I've fished with in different lodges. It's been great because they're friends of mine. And now I had a quote unquote excuse to go fishing with them and film a show.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So you kind of said it. So you were 16 years prior to the actual television show. So was there a time before that? And how did you get into this? Like, how did you get into fishing and why muskie? Like, obviously I'm looking at a 12-pound largemouth. I'm looking at a huge walleye, but here you are the muskie king. You tell me.
Yeah. So I, my parents we had a summer home in northern Wisconsin that we got when I was in about 7th grade. And so started going up there, had lots of family friends. We fished for bass, we fished for crappies, walleyes, pike, everything. But everyone talks about, you got to catch a muskie, you got to catch a muskie. It's the fish at 10,000 casts. People catch one of them in their lifetime, and my dad and I did that for a couple of years. We tried everything. And, we had lots of family friends, but they didn't really want to talk about fishing spots. All kinds of fishing spots were secret. Do not talk, right? Do not mention that, at a dinner conversation. If my dad would say, hey, where'd you get those walleyes? The table would go silent and no one would say a word. And so I picked up a Fishing Facts magazine when I was in like 7th grade, read an article, on bass fishing, tried it, and it worked. And I was like, tried a pike thing and it worked. I'm like, what is going on here? So I'm like, Dad, we got to get this. And he's like, well, anytime to get a 7th grader to read, I'm in. Get the magazine. And then I got in Fisherman magazine and I read Fishing Facts and in Fisherman. And so I was reading these magazines and trying stuff and it was all working. And I'm like, this is really cool because we had this summer home and I could try it all and it was working. And then my dad got us, said, let's try to catch these muskies. And, we would have these muskies follow and I didn't know how to figure eight and didn't know how to catch them. And I went to a fishing school when I was in high school with a couple of my buddies that Spence Petros, who was the editor of Fishing Facts magazine at the time, was teaching. It was a muskie and a pike. It was a multi-species to a couple of them. And I learned all about that, a lot more about it. And then I also went on a 1-week trip with our dads and some of my high school friends with Spence to Eagle Lake. And we did walleye and we did smallmouth and we spent the day, Spence and I spent the day muskie fishing together. And it was him who was, like a legend in the sport, and myself who was just some high school kid, but loved the muskie fish. And we did that. And I kind of got hooked on that. And then I also I had a couple of friends of mine that fished on the lake that were guides, and they knew Joe Bucher, who was another legendary muskie angler. And so when I was in high school, I met Joe, and my dad and I went walleye fishing with them one day, and then we went muskie fishing with them. And Joe is like, realized that I was totally hooked on this muskie fishing thing as a high school kid. And when he had days off, he'd call me and goes, hey, I'm going to go check out this lake. You want to come? So I was fortunate enough to have both Joe Bucher and Spence Petros, who are muskie fishing legends. And this was in the late 70s and early 80s, teach me a lot. And then I had a testing grounds in northern Wisconsin. And so, when I was in high school, Andy, I wanted to have a muskie fishing television show. That was something that I wanted to do back then. So it was a dream of mine and kind of a thing I pursued since high school. I still had I'm a geologist by trade. I had another career, another job. My dad's like, you need to get a real job and do this. But, my passion, it was always to fish. And I always wanted to have a TV show. And, the muskie thing was just something that was just very different to me. And I loved it because it was much more active and the fish were big.
It's exciting fish. You get it on. It's just it's your battling. It's like, I don't know. It's not like it's a difference between small game and big game. I'm a hunter, right? And the sensation of just, I don't know. It's just, it's hard to explain unless you get out there and actually do it, right? So I can feel where you're. So when you first broke it to your dad that you were going to be a fisherman,
yeah,
I wish I would have fly him to walk. Do you remember the words he said to you? What, you're crazy?
Yeah, well, he was like, he was kind of like, you are crazy if you think you can make a living fishing. You know what I mean? You better stay in college, get your degree, get a real job, and fish on the side, and then see how it goes. And that's kind of what I did. And I started out fishing. I fished I was fortunate to win some muskie tournaments early on, and ultimately I won like 7 muskie tournaments. But I also fished the pro walleye trail in the 80s, and when that was all starting, and I won 1 tournament doing that, made a bunch of championships. So I was kind of doing walleye and muskies. I wasn't really doing bass fishing, although I love the smallmouth fish, Andy. That's a big thing. In fact, I fished the first time. My buddy Tom, who's been on the show, Muskie, is my muskie fishing partner. That Tom and we fished the Sturgeon Bay Open in Wisconsin, right? Big smallmouth tournament. The very first time we fished it, we ended up getting second place. So we lost the tournament by 3/4 of a pound. And so I mean, I love fishing for smallies too, but muskies were my passion. And I knew that when I was fishing the walleye tournaments, I was great in March, April, May, totally focused. But I remember fishing walleye tournaments in July during the summer, or even in August, and I would be literally in the middle of a tournament, day 2, day 3, in the hunt, right? You're in the top 25, you're there, and all of a sudden my mind would daydream about, okay, I'm going to Lake of the Woods 10 days from now. What color bucktails do I need to pack? So I would find myself daydreaming about muskies in the middle of a walleye tournament, and I'm like, you know what? I got to get out of here. This is definitely not for me. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It sounds like everybody's story, and I think I've heard it from Dave Mercer, where his teacher would tell him, Dave, you got to get a job.
Yeah.
I don't want it. This is what I want to do. And you guys have all chased, but you know what? We have to be realistic. Like, it didn't come easy, right? Obviously there was a lot of time, and we talked about this with Gussie not long ago. And I said, yeah, it's a passion you love doing. You'd rather do this than sit in an office, but there's a lot of hours that go into this, right? And I think even more hours when you're fishing for muskie. I'm not saying in a bad way, but like being a 10,000 cast, like how many days does it take you to film a show?
Yeah. I mean, it is a lot of work. I mean, it's that to film the shows, they typically take me, I try to give myself 2.5 days to get an episode done. I mean, there's days every year where I get the episode done. I have 1 or 2 days a year where I am finished filming the entire Muskie show by 2 p.m. And, that's the best. That happens a couple times a year. And a couple times a year, I fish the 2.5 days a year and I get 0, come back with nothing. You know what I mean? So I have that happen as well. So it's kind of that trade-off that you can be. But, like anything else, if you're interested in kind of pursue a career in any of this pro fishing aspect, that there's just a lot of work. It's a lot of, as much as fishing, it's as much promotion and marketing. And, I mean, heck, we didn't have the social media when I started, but I was writing for all kinds of publications. I was taking outdoor writers at the time, which were, very important, out fishing all the time. I was doing television shows for segments for Midwest Outdoors and other things. I was doing seminars, every muskie club, every fishing show I could. I was doing all that. So for the partners that I work with, I was never a full-time guy. I was a tournament angler, a weekend warrior that would go in guides' backyard, try to compete with them and catch whatever I could and do that. I had a lot of friends of mine with guides, but, I kind of went the tournament fishing, just fishing, promoting, go learning on the fly, learning waters. That was the approach I took through it.
Did you, who would you say was probably not to say the best guest? I'm sure they're all good guests, but maybe a rememberable guest on your show.
Oh, I've had so many memorable ones. I've had, that's really, really hard. I have, guys like, when I fish with Bill Sandy on Lake of the Woods, and still when I fish with Bill, who's a legendary guide, when I watch him, when a muskie comes in and follows one of his lures, I find myself literally stopping what I'm doing, just watching what he's doing, because it's almost like we call him, jokingly, the muskie whisperer, because it's almost like he's talking to him. I mean, I've watched him catch muskies at boat side that I thought, if someone said, Jim, what's the bet? Do you want it? I'm like, $100 says no way you can catch this one. Next thing you know, I'm grabbing the net for him. I've had him. He's been, so it's just fun watching him. That's always education. I've got, I've fished with, my buddy Tom, who I fish with. He is screaming and cussing at him and totally animated, and that makes for a fun day on the water. For it, I've got some of my friends that are guides are great storytellers, and you can tell why they're successful. Others are just, they don't say to get them to talk on camera is impossible. I have to they're so focused. I actually I have a sign with my camera guy where I rub my foot on the carpet like a horse with his hoof, to make sure he's rolling the camera. And then I'll just start talking about something and let them talk. Because if I stop and say, all right, let's talk about this, it's going to be crickets. It's going to be, from there. But they're phenomenal in their element, and I'm trying to let people at home see some of these people that are really good anglers. No, they're not television stars. They're just outstanding anglers in their element, and just let you, peek into what they do on a daily basis. And that's really fun.
So, well, because we're on this topic right now, Bill Dance, you all know who Bill Dance is, and he's had whole shows on bloopers, right? And some of them are real, because I've talked to them, and that's how they came to be what they are, right? Have you ever had a Bill Dance moment?
I have. I mean, every year I get some bloopers in there. I had my camera guy fall out of the boat. I had him actually pull me out of the boat one time. It's funny that everybody was safe and happy, but it was November, and we fell out of the boat in November, and unfortunately we were in shallower water, so that was all good, but it was really cold and it was really scary, when you've got all those clothes on, and all of a sudden, the camera guy fell out of the boat, and as he fell out, he just naturally reached, and I would just, your natural reaction is to reach over and grab somebody, when a wave hit. And so he grabbed onto my jacket and just literally yanked me out of the boat, and we're both in the water, and then we both got back in the boat in a matter of seconds, but we were drenched and cold and everything was ruined. So it was a Bill Dance moment, but it was not a happy moment, at the end, because it was, the shoot was over after that.
And the camera, did it end up in the water?
Oh yeah. Camera, mics, everything was in the water, everything full on, it was just one of those things where, it was just a bad, kind of a rogue wave that just hit at the wrong time and just knocked them off balance. And, with the weight of the camera, just kind of fell back, and, and there's rods in the way, one of those things up in the bow. And because, sometimes, I always encourage my camera guys do a lot of sports, right? They come from not fishing, but they come from doing Blackhawks games and Bulls games and baseball games. So my camera operators don't stay in the back of the boat watching all the time, or they do it certain times. But the minute you catch a fish, because of their sports background, they'll run to the front of the boat, and they'll be next to my leg or over my shoulder or behind my thing. So to get a different camera, people now have at home, you get the GoPro point of view, you put them on your forehead, you put them on your chest. Well, as sports guys, they would take the cameras and get them, like the camera lens was over my shoulder, underneath my arm, or between my legs, or next to me. And that would get that same angle with a really good camera. And we've been doing that for 16 years. And I think it gives the show a totally different look. But it's also kind of dangerous for the camera operators and me, because we knock each other down all the time. It happens, it really, really does.
Have you because when our topic, we were talking with Bob Azumi with respect to that filming time where you said sometimes you come back with nothing there. So let's say it's a 5-day trip or 3-day trip that you're trying to get your show in, and the weather's not as cooperative. you still go out there, like, regardless with the weather? And have you ever
Yeah.
been in a situation with bad weather? I know Italo was telling us that he felt life threatened at one position where he tied himself to the boat. So I don't know. Have you ever been in a position where you were pretty scared of what was happening?
Yeah, no, I have actually. I've definitely had those situations. I mean, so when I do like my Canadian shoots are like 6 day deals where it's 1 day driving. Remember, when I have to drive to Canada, it's a 13 to 15 hour drive for me to the destination. So I spend the entire day driving for 15 hours. I fish 2.5 days in one location, drive to the next Canadian location, fish 2.5 days, and come home. No, I know I have no scout boats. There's no extra boats. None of that goes on. It's just I've got 2.5 days. We have to make it happen and go from there. So when it's rainy and windy, it's hard. I mean, there's times with the camera, even though I have a waterproof cover, you can't have it out. Like imagine taking your laptop out in the boat and saying, okay, we're going to put it in a plastic bag, but you still have to type and you still have to work on it. So that thing can suck up moisture and go down and get ruined. So it shortens up the day. On a rainy day, I might only have 4 hours and a day with a downpour where I can fish. I actually bring a big umbrella out in the boat, like a patio umbrella, and I stick it in the back of my boat, and hopefully my camera operator could tuck under there. But if it's rainy and windy, that can't work. But as your point of, so that really shortens the period, Andy, whether, when you're filming in general, it's a much shorter day than a regular fishing day, right? Getting the camera gear ready, getting the camerators out there. I mean, the camera operators, it's their job. They're not doing 14-hour days. No one works. You don't work 14-hour days on your regular job, or very few people do, so I've got a very limited window. There's so many hours, and they got to get cameras right, lights right, sound right. Every time you pull up to the spot, okay, is everything set? Okay, now we go. Whereas, you pull up, you make cast, you start fishing in a given day. That's just more time. The camera operators need a break. Okay, you got to do that. That's not how we might do it if we were fishing for fun. They need to start later or whatever it may be. So all those factors shorten your day, put a lot more pressure. It's a lot more like tournament fishing to do that. And then you throw in the danger situation of you travel across an area, like you said, and all of a sudden there's big wind. Yeah. I mean, I've had a few of those situations where it's put on the life jackets. It's going to take you 2.5 hours to get in or get back. I've had a few of those hairy situations where I'm like, man, I'm just glad we got back today. And I try to avoid those situations because you've got camera gears, but inevitably you can do it. But I try to I make a point. My motto is live to fish another day. And so I take safety it's really something I take into consideration. And if I can, on a bad day, I watch the weather. If I have to drive 30 or 40 miles to another boat launch, I'll launch there to be closer to the spot I have to fish as opposed to driving across big water.
One thing I see with a lot of people, right? It's and even manufacturers with product, right? You build your credibility, your name, and you're at a point of your career. And sometimes I think it's a lot easier getting to that level than maintaining it. You agree with that kind of, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think there are two different ways to do it. You can build your reputation lots of different ways. Today with social media, that's just one way to do it. But, you have to appeal to people beyond that because, I don't care what people think. The number of anglers, maybe the vast that are actually just viewing things via social media does not represent the majority. I can tell you in the muskie world and probably even the walleye world, that does not represent the majority of anglers that are out there. So it's just one avenue you have to do it. And then once you, like I said, once you have a show or whatever you're doing to maintain it, you have to try to do different things. You have to be aware of, like for me, it's like I try to fish a few new waters every year. I try to incorporate places at different times of year, new guests. I try to incorporate new techniques, new use of electronics. And so you have to kind of keep trying to recreate that stuff and do it. And, with muskie fishing, it's really hard because, filming a muskie show is a lot harder than filming a bass show or a walleye show, only from the standpoint there's fewer fish. Like there's fewer actors to show up to be on the show. It's just the nature of the beast, and it takes more time, and so you're only going to get a handful of bites every day. And on those days where maybe you get 3 muskie bites, if you lose all 3 of your muskies, you got nothing to show for it today. Whereas there's not a lot of days where you're only going to go out and get three bass bites. You might lose 3 bass bites, but you still might get 5 more bites, and you could get 5 quality bass and still make a portion of a really good show and have to go in the next day. But musky fishing, it's rarely that way.
So would you say that it's easier to create a show around casting instead of trolling, or depends on the lake?
It really depends. I do both. I probably do, let's say 75 to 80% of my shows are all casting, and 20 to 25% of them are trolling. And I think, television wide trolling isn't as exciting as casting. If I could catch every muskie on a topwater lure, be the best, right? Every bass show, catch them on topwater, the best. Every walleye show, a muskie show, when you get them on topwater, it's the best. But because there's nothing like that visual strike and seeing the whole thing, but you can't do that all the time. So you have to be versatile. And I also am a big proponent of, I'm trying to teach people about musky fishing. It's not just about the lake, right? So I want them to learn, here's how you troll with a short line or a long line. Yeah, here's how you figure eight, how to do it. Here's how you use live bait on a quick strike rig. And I'm also all about, I try to show people, here's how you fish in spring, summer, and fall. So you can see lots of different waters, lots of different techniques in a span of seasons. Andy, if I was really smart, I could probably pick one Canadian body of water like Lake of the Woods and get the whole show done in a month. But it would all look the same. I'd catch big fish, but it would all look the same. And I think it just wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah. You know what? So Gord Pizer is really, really lucky.
Yeah. I hate him. Hate Gord.
So okay. So going back to that, obviously from a show perspective, and depending where you are, but what do you prefer? Do you prefer trolling over casting? Like, I know the casting might be better and easier to talk and learn, but what do you yourself personally? What do you prefer to do?
Oh, I'm a caster. I definitely prefer to cast. I would say that all things equal, and I'm kind of a bucktail fisherman. I love to fish blades and any kind of inline spinners. I love power fishing, doing it that. If people who watch the show, the big soft plastics are all the rage, and they have been. And I catch muskies doing that, but that's probably the smallest percentage of lures that the muskies get caught on my show. Even though probably all the younger people doing it and newer people, they're all buying the big Medusas and the big 12, 18-inch soft plastics and ripping them. Catch fish on those too, but I probably use them less than other anglers. It's very situational. And but on the flip side, Andy, when it's really, I get into like later October into November when those fish move deeper, there's something cool about trolling deeper and using your electronics and when those fish are deeper and catching a big fish trolling that I really, really like as well.
See, to me, because I've done my share of musky fishing back in the day when I was a lot younger, and I used to revert to trolling when my shoulders felt like it was about to fall off. It's kind of like, all right, break time, so let's troll.
Right. That's why you got to train. You got to work out. When you're musky fishing for that, for sure.
If you ever need a guest when you're doing a trolling show and keep people entertained, I did one with the Zumi once, and I brought some really good food.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm in.
I'm joking around with you, but you can come up here and stay at our place if you want to do something in the Kawartha Lakes. We're literally minutes from the Kawartha Lakes, but
right.
I'll tell you, just like when I come into that room on the Sunday and I see all those guys there, and a lot of those guys are the same guys that come year after year because they're musky Canada guys, and we see a lot of new faces every year. It's astonishing how they're constantly, like, they come with their pads. You're right, they come with their pads. They're writing down stuff and information, and they're always content coming out of that room. And it's just a great deal, and it's become a great deal. It has actually put us into doing bass days and now walleye days. So we've got and Great Lake days. So but that all stemmed from the Muskie group, because it was just so phenomenal, so great. What are the shows like? Like Chicago, I think, has a huge Muskie show. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are several. There's a Muskie show in Chicago. There's one in Wisconsin. There's one in Minnesota. There's one in Ohio, and I think there's one in New York. So you have different Muskie specific trade shows that go on. So pretty fanatical, and obviously the Muskie Odyssey in Canada is similar to that. I think with Muskie anglers, it's kind of like there is a real, because they're harder to catch because there's fewer of them, right? But that doesn't mean that they're impossible to catch, right? If they were impossible to catch, there's no way I could do a television show. I mean, that's the simplest answer. So, and I tell people all the time, I mean, there's lots of days where I catch 6 muskies in a day. It's not impossible. It happens very frequently. You just got to be on the right water, and you got to understand what's going on from there. So, that happens, and it's just, but, on the flip side, there's days, muskies are probably more influenced by weather than any other fish. I mean, there's these environmental influencers that are there, moonrise, moonset, which way is the wind going? A high pressure system moves in and out. It affects bass and walleye anglers as well, right? You can, if you're a bass angler front coming in, you can power fish faster with a crankbait or spinnerbait, and then conditions change, and it's post frontal conditions, and it's sunny and bluebird conditions, and maybe you got to be you're pitching soft plastics, or you're using a some type of Nico rig, some kind of wacky or something different in the cover, and you got to slow down. Muskies are the same way, and that. That weather impacts them, but since there's fewer muskies in a system, you really gotta change your approach, and that's why a lot of muskie anglers are trying to learn. What do you do on those tough days? And that's for sure. And so I tell people, I go, besides coming to the seminars, I've got a Muskie Hunter TV app that actually helps predict your best times throughout the day and can help you as well.
That's pretty cool. That's actually a real cool thing. So it puts people in touch with you all the time, basically, and you're accessible. So I guess, what would be a goal? Like, obviously, have you got a world record yet?
No. I mean, for me, all muskie anglers have different goals, right? You got to catch your first one, right? You want to catch your first one, catch and release your first one. And then it's like, oh, I got to catch a 40-incher. I want to do that. And then, but the goal, the trophy, 50 inches is kind of like the trophy mark, right? So everybody wants to catch a 50-incher. That was kind of a goal, and so you go there. I mean, I had lots of goals where, I wanted to catch a 50-incher, did that. And then it was like, I wanted to catch a 50-incher on every single musky lure, on every single technique. And I've done that, and I wanted to catch a 40-pounder, and then I wanted to catch a 50-pounder, and I've caught a few 50-pounders, and so, I've been pretty fortunate, because I'm like, hey, I wanted to catch a 50-incher on a river, a lake, and a reservoir. Done that, and on every lure possible, right? Every type. I've caught them on topwater, bucktails, jerk baits, minnow baits, jigs, soft plastics, live bait, casting or trolling. I've done that. I've been pretty fortunate. Haven't caught, 225 or so 50-inchers, and a handful of 50-pounders. It's those are all those goals you go through. I mean, I think that people evolve, so I'm just, to me, I'm always trying to learn new water, and, my goals are about trying to catch as many big ones as fast as possible. And I'm trying to figure out, trying to, learn new techniques. That's kind of what drives me.
You have an actual ticker of how many muskie you've caught in your career? I hate to ask that, but like, do you have more or less here?
I haven't added up the total. It's thousands, right? Number one, it's in the thousands. And then, but I can tell you, I think I've caught like 227 of them over 50 inches. Cause that's kind of one of the things I do, but I have a log of every muskie I've caught since around 1980. And it's funny. And I have these paper logs that, I don't show to anybody, that, and it's really important. And again, as a muskie angler, doing this is invaluable, because I know by taking my logs, and I don't care if you fish one lake 1 week every year, by logging every single day when you fish, what did you catch? Every muskie, what did you catch them on? What were the sky conditions, the wind conditions? Even the days you didn't catch any, what lake you fish. I wake up every day, and when I'm fishing a different area, I know, let's say it's northern Wisconsin, or it could be Canada where you've got lots of lakes around you. I know based on the weather conditions and time of year, these are the handful of lakes that are going to be most productive for me. And when I'm on that lake, these are the handful of spots that are going to work. And based on the weather conditions, these are the baits that work. And a lot of that is based on my logs. And so I took a lot of that information and we kind of put it into this Muskie Hunter TV app that has a mathematical formula. And it's a free app, and it has the peaks and troughs of what's going to happen on any given day. So yeah, I have records of all of that, Andy, for sure. But that's being a scientist, right? That's just the nerd in me has to track it and try to figure out, can you statistically predict or mathematically predict what's going to happen? So,
I agree. That stuff is important because, like, even from the bass stuff, I always said that I used to learn more from those bad days than from the good days. I know that sounds kind of silly, but like at the end of the day, you start. I think fishing and catching fish is more of a process of eliminating things that don't work. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I agree with you 100%. On the bad days, you definitely learn. The fish haven't left the lake, right? They're in certain spots. Like if you caught them the day before, whether it be bass or walleye or muskie, they're probably on the same spots, right? They may moved a little deeper, maybe moved thicker into the cover. So how do you get them to bite? It's the same thing, on that. So, for me, I'm like you. I learn most about how to catch them on the tough days. But when the fish are really biting, those are the days where I go fish brand new spots. I still fish my favorite spots, but I force myself on the days when the fish are biting, go fish 2 or 3 new spots on that day when they're biting. And what happens is all of a sudden you will find another new spot, a new quote unquote confident spot. And so, that's a great way to find new spots. And then when the fish slow down, you learn how to catch them and you can go back to that spot and have confidence. I'm like, hey, they live here. They're swimming around in here. Now, how do I catch them?
I think everybody's kind of going to that social platform. Like, I think it's just a fact of the future, and it is what it is. And the TV show you got is great, and everything's going great that way. Even this is social media, really, when you think about it.
It is.
How do you see your direction? Like, I know it's hard to tell because who knows what the social platform is going to be in the next 10 to 15 years. It seems to be evolving every week. So, but right now, like, do you have goals set that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, I think that, certainly, having not, kind of grown up as that in that age, as that being, the way to communicate. I mean, and, is kind of personally a little bit hard for me. Also, that is the truth. Being a muskie angler, Andy, I can tell you that before I had my television show, I would not tell anybody where I was fishing or how many fish I caught. If you ran into me in a boat launch before I had my television show, I would say that 9 times out of 10, I would tell you I caught nothing, no matter what happened that day. You know what I mean? And if someone asked me, do you went on a trip? Where did you go? I would do everything I could to avoid so, knowing that I don't like to say what I caught and where I caught, social media is kind of the opposite for me, right? Just as a general rule. But having said all that, obviously I'm in the business. I have a television show, how to do it. I think I see myself doing a lot more what I want to call MHTV or Muskie Hunter TV shorts. We're doing kind of shorter programming, 2 to 5 minute segments, maybe more how-to segments, throwing a fish. I see doing a lot more of that in the future, kind of that being what people esteem more. I think it's going to evolve into a lot more of that.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't know that TikTok 30 seconds, it does get you hyped up. It's a great little thing, but I think you maybe need that little bit longer, that short that you're talking about, that might just give you that little bit more information as well, that kind of brings it to why it's there and why it's happening, and good for manufacturers to make an understanding to people, right? Right. It really is, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, you know what, that's pretty neat that you're actually looking at that, thinking, hey, how are we going to progress the show, and that's a good thing. So just one last thing, muskie tournaments in the US opposed to because in Canada they've been shunned, like people and I don't have to tell you that. It's the reality, and I respect the guys up here because But like muskies tournaments in the States, like they've been going for a long time now. And
Yeah.
like how do they work? Like how do they do them?
Yeah, so they've all evolved, right? Because of the, the shunning, right? And the concern. And that, Andy, I mean, you've seen, running, a great bass tour like you do, you've seen how they've all changed, right? I mean, in bass fishing, you were one of the pioneers with everything you did with Shimano and taking care of the bass, right? When they get, so you know all about that. And the muskie thing is the same, right? That, there aren't as many muskies. So if you're going to have a tournament, you got to make sure the fish get taken care of. So there's no transporting of muskies all across the lake, and that goes on. None of that happens in the tournaments. It did early on, years and years ago. And the fish are much more hardy than people take them for granted. And granted, that's one thing that, but anyway, so the way that the muskie tournaments work now is that in the States is you at the beginning of every given day, you're giving a bump board. You have a bump board to measure fish, and it might have a color sticker on it, or you're given some kind of something to bring into your boat that day after the inspection that has a unique color or something with it that will identify it's this particular day, right? That it's unique to that day. So then what happens is you're out fishing, you catch a fish, and once you catch that fish, you go and you let that fish go. You take a picture of that fish on the bump board. You lay him on the bump board. You take a picture of it with the length with that particular sticker there, so it's caught that day. It shows the length of the fish, and then, excuse me, my dog is barking. and then you take the length of that fish, and then you take the picture, and then you send that picture to the tournament director. And then they verify the length or estimate the length, and you get points for there. So the fish are immediately caught, measured, and released.
I got a dog. I'm surprised he hasn't barked yet. It's all good. And that's cool because like you said, like for us, fish care is the biggest part of making it right. You know what I mean? And making it acceptable. And because we get a lot of people that will come to our tournament sites, like local cottages and stuff like that. And when we explain them what we're doing, we bring them on a tour of all our stuff. It definitely makes a different deal. He wants to go outside.
Yeah, that's all right. I had to let him out.
That's all good, dude.
We're done.
Yeah, it would be good. But the thing is and that's another thing too, because you know what, especially when it comes to muskie, I think that if somebody just says, hey, we're going to start running muskie events and this and that, I think you have to put trust in the organizers that they've done their homework and ensuring that the fish care is there, and whether it's the instant release and the one thing about us, like at the end of the day, when we're doing our tournaments, like I always think about how do I make a guy go home and feel that his fish was properly weighed and he felt good about it, and he's not driving home thinking, you know what, man, like that fish was heavier than that, or that fish didn't weigh right. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing there with an event, like because that's what makes the event satisfying. So it's a lot of work on the organizer to ensure that he's leaving that guy with that that good feeling thing. So you know what, I'll tell you, like the guys up here, they're working so hard in grading these better fisheries, right? I had a question for you that I kind of missed, and it was like, how do you feel about like hybrid muskie? Like, do you like them? Do you prefer over them? Like, how do you feel about them?
Well, I mean, I like them. I mean, they're they're kind of they're a combination of a muskie pike, and they're beautiful. I mean, they look gorgeous. The coloration in them is amazing. They're just iridescent, and with the bars on them and everything. They tend to be more aggressive than a muskie. Like kind of like a pike. So they're good. So I welcome all species of muskies. I have no bias towards any of them from there. So the hybrids are great, and in many of the fisheries in the southern part of the U.S. or particularly in the western part of the U.S., they stock the hybrids because they generally don't naturally reproduce, and so if they're in, let's say, the states on the western part of the U.S., if they wanted to like stop that fishery, they just quit stocking them, and then after 10 years they'd be gone. from there. But I've caught them like on Eagle Lake. I've caught natural hybrids that are just that natural cross. They weren't stocked between a muskie and a natural. It's beautiful. Caught them in St. Clair. There's a lot of them in St. Clair like that right now going on. So no, they're cool. It's a really cool fish. You kind of fish for them the same way generally.
You ever think you'd see a hybrid hit that musky lunge size? Like you think you ever see a hybrid get up to the high 50s, possibly 60 pounds?
I have seen 50-inch hybrids. I've caught them. I think the longest one I ever caught was like 46 inches. I caught it in a tournament, won a tournament with a 46-inch hybrid. Which was pretty cool. Very memorable. Caught it in like 2 feet of water, fishing reeds, like I was smallmouth fishing with the spinnerbait. Very, very cool for that. But yeah, I have not caught a 50-inch hybrid. I've seen photos of 50-inch hybrids caught in different areas. So there are some big ones. They are amazing. I don't know how big they ultimately get, from there, but they can certainly get up to that 40-pound class. Yeah.
So I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to let you go knowing that you are officially booked for next year for the fishing show.
I'll be there.
Yeah. We missed that more. Big Jim was talking about, waiting for you guys downstairs, ready to, you, Gordon. I know you guys used to every morning, Sunday morning, you guys down together. So he said he'll be waiting next year at the doors to drive you guys to the fishing show. So, so you know what, I just want to say thank you for all the years of your support. And I really feel good about, what we're doing this year. I know it's not how-tos and this, that, but there was a lot of information that you put out there. And at the same time, it was something that, people need to know who we're bringing. And I think that it's important that we bring people that have that whole, like, many years of backing behind them. And you had an opportunity to say what you've done, what you've achieved, things that you're still doing and how far you've traveled. I don't think I hit if you ever did anything in Europe, but that's maybe for something for when you come back for the show. But I do respect everything you do for the sport on both sides of the border. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here today.
No, Andy, thanks for having me. I certainly love coming up to the show, being with, so many of the great Canadian anglers and working with the Muskies Canada organization, which you do, which is great. I encourage everybody to kind of become a Muskies Canada member to help the sport of the fishery grow. I think they do a lot towards research, and that's all great. And, when you're, I tell all the muskie anglers this summer, it's, just fish hard and fish smart. It's not about putting in 1,000 hours. It's being smart about what you're doing, just like anything else. And you're gonna catch more of them. Just make sure you take care of that fish when you let them go.
Cool. Thank you very much, my friend. And I'll be watching on TV. So
all right, see you later.
Thank you. All right, that is Jim Saric that just was with us, a guest here, and he did put out a really strong message at the end with respect to supporting groups like Muskies Canada. No different than Mike Miller saying, hey, support groups like the OFAH. And again, you can go out and you fish and you can have a great time. And but there is a side where you have to be where you have to respect the fishery and try to figure out how do you put back into it. And I get it. A lot of people have lives. We can't all go work hatcheries. We can't all do stuff. And I totally respect that. But sometimes that just by buying a membership of something that relates to what you do, you got people out there that are putting that time in and doing that. And the thing is, a lot of times where they are stuck in doing and going that one step further is by simply having the funds to do that. So like I said, from a conservation side of things, and if you want to give back to what you love to do the best, whether it's muskie or whether it's just outdoors, there are a lot of groups out there, and we fully support Muskies Canada as we fully support the OFAH and everything they do for fishing, hunting in general. So once again, on behalf of the Spring Fishing and Boat Show, stay tuned because we have many more speakers ahead. And this is the Spring Fishing and Boat Show 2022, and we are getting personal.
As muskie anglers, we all plan, prepare, and are consumed in the pursuit of a trophy muskie. Skix is available with 2-piece saltwater-tested tough technology for easy storage in your boat or truck and are designed to handle any muskie lure. You can be assured you're backed by precision Shimano technology. If you fish for skis, you need these.
Days off are best with sandy feet and smiles as bright as the sun. Those are the good days, when life slows down and your only job is making memories that nourish your soul. Mercury engines are made for exploring. So are you. Go boldly.